7 Rules to Survive This Haunted, Abandoned Hospital. Horror Story. Part 1. The Offer. I'm not proud of why I took the job. Student loans were eating me alive. My car was one flat tire away from giving up on life, and rent had just gone up again. So when I saw the listing pinned at the back of the nursing school bulletin board, I didn't think twice. Night shift nurse needed, 7 nights only, $10,000 upon completion, private facility, no experience necessary. I called the number. A man answered. His voice was calm, but detached, like he was reading from a script he'd grown tired of. "You'll start tomorrow," he said. 10 p.m. sharp. St. Joseph's Hospital, East Wing entrance. Come alone. I remember blinking at the phone. St. Joseph's? Isn't that place abandoned? He finished for me. Yes, but not tonight. The line went dead. The next evening, I drove across the city, heart pounding in my chest the entire way. St. Joseph's loomed against the purple dusk like a fossilized skeleton of suffering. Windows boarded, walls cracked. The smell of damp rot clung to the parking lot like fog. But there was light, a single flickering fluorescent above the side door. I stepped out of the car, feeling the ground crunch beneath my sneakers. The air was colder here, not just nighttime cold. Hospital after death cold. I pushed open the side door. It groaned like it hadn't moved in years. The hallway inside was dark, except for emergency lighting. The walls were stained, the floor sticky beneath my shoes. I could swear I heard something, like someone wheezing, far down the hall. But when I turned, it stopped. At the end of the corridor stood a man in a long black coat. Gray hair, sharp eyes. He didn't smile. "You're early," he said. Yes, I'm here for the job." He nodded. "Come." He led me into what used to be a nurse's station. Dust coated every surface. A cracked monitor blinked faintly on the desk, its screen showing nothing but static. Without a word, the man handed me a sheet of yellowed paper. 7 lines, handwritten. 7 rules. 1. Always close room 302's door before midnight. 2. Never look into the 3rd floor mirror. 3. If someone calls your name and you don't see them, don't respond. 4. Only administer medication if the patient says, "It's my time now." 5. If the clock reads 3:33 a.m., hide in the medicine cabinet. 6. No one else must see this list. 7. If you survive until 6 a.m. on the 7th night, burn this list. I looked up at him, my mouth half open. Is this a joke? He didn't blink. "You will follow them," he said, "or they will follow you." He handed me a small brass key. "The east wing is sealed. Do not enter. Stay on the first 2 floors. The others are not safe." Then he turned and walked away into the darkness. I never heard his footsteps fade. It was like he'd been swallowed by the building. I stood there in the silence, paper shaking in my hand. And then I heard it, a soft click. Behind me, room 302's door was ajar. Part 2. The Rules. The first night had barely begun, and already something felt wrong. The hospital was dead silent, but not the peaceful kind. This was the waiting for something to happen kind of silence. The kind that builds in the lungs, thick and dry, like dust waiting to choke. I stood frozen in front of room 302. Its door, now slightly open, let out a creaking rhythm every time the air shifted. It was like the building itself was breathing. I stepped forward, the paper of rules clenched in my fist, and shut the door gently but firmly. A click echoed down the empty corridor. The sound didn't just bounce, it traveled, like it was carrying a message to someone. Or something. I started exploring the first floor. My flashlight buzzed faintly as its beam cut through cobwebs and floating dust. The walls bore faded signs. X-ray, pediatrics, ICU. All dead ends now. Somewhere down the west wing, I heard a distant shuffling, like someone dragging their feet in slippers. But when I turned the corner, there was nothing, just an empty gurney, one wheel still slowly spinning. My radio crackled to life suddenly. I hadn't even realized it was clipped to my coat. "Nurse, it's my time now." The voice was faint, childlike. I froze. The fourth rule: only administer medication if the patient says, "It's my time now." But I wasn't carrying any meds. I didn't even know where the pharmacy was in this place. "I'm in room 209, the voice whispered again, weaker this time. "Please, hurry." I stood still for too long. A loud slam behind me made me jump. The gurney had flipped, but there was no wind, no slope. It had just fallen. I ran. Room 209 was dimly lit by a flickering overhead bulb that pulsed like a dying heart. The door was already open. Inside, the bed was empty. But something moved in the corner. A small figure. His hospital gown hung loose on his bony frame. His eyes were deep, like they didn't belong in a child's face. He looked up at me and smiled, gently. "I thought you weren't coming." A boy. I stepped back. "No meds," I said quickly. "I don't have anything." He didn't move. "That's okay," he whispered. "You followed the rule. You came when I called." His body flickered, like static, and then in a burst of air that smelled like iron and rot, he vanished. The room fell silent again, except for the slow, steady drip, drip, drip of water behind the walls. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat curled up behind the nurse station, eyes locked on the clock. 3:12 a.m. I remembered rule number 5. If the clock reads 3:33 a.m., hide in the medicine cabinet. At 3:30, I stood up. At 3:31, I walked to the cabinet. At 3:32, I opened the doors and crawled inside. At 3:33, the screaming began. It wasn't one voice, it was dozens. Men, women, children, all wailing in agony, all at once. I couldn't move. The walls around me pulsed like living flesh. Something brushed against the cabinet door, scraping, dragging. Then silence. 3:34 a.m. When I emerged, the hallway was different. All the doors were open, and every room had someone standing inside, not moving, just staring into the hallway. They all turned to look at me in unison. Part 3. The Mirror. I ran. I didn't care where. I just needed to move. Get away from the open doors, from the eyes that didn't blink. Every door had someone, and every one of them had seen me. My feet pounded across the stained linoleum as flickering emergency lights blinked above me like dying stars. My breath came in sharp bursts, loud in the silence, too loud. I took a left, then a right, then down a stairwell. And that's when I realized I was on the 3rd floor. My stomach turned cold. Rule number 2. Never look into the third floor mirror. I tried to backtrack, but the stairwell door had slammed shut behind me. No handle, no keycard reader, just a metal door and the quiet tick of something locking from the inside. There was only one way forward, a hallway labeled Intensive Psychiatric Ward, Level 3. The overhead lights hummed low. The hallway was longer than it should have been. As I walked, the air thickened like syrup. I felt resistance, like the hallway didn't want me there. And then I saw it at the far end of the hall, past the peeling paint, past the rusted wheelchairs, was the mirror. It spanned wall to wall, cracked across the center like a lightning bolt. My legs moved on their own. I tried to look away, tried to stare at my shoes, at the floor, at anything, but the mirror pulled my eyes like gravity, and I saw nothing. I wasn't there. My reflection wasn't there, but something was. It was shaped like me. It stood like me. But its head was tilted just slightly off, like a curious dog. Its skin shimmered wet and pale, like it had been peeled and stitched back together. It lifted a hand and mimicked my movement, except I hadn't moved. The thing in the mirror reached out. The mirror began to ripple. I staggered back. My foot hit an overturned gurney, and I crashed to the floor. The mirror screamed, not a sound of glass breaking, but a voice, high and sharp, shrieking like metal torn in half. From its center, something began to push through. The glass bent outward, like plastic under heat. The thing that wasn't me was coming out. I scrambled up, blood rushing in my ears, and sprinted back down the hall. The lights began bursting, one by one, behind me. Pop, pop, pop! Each bulb exploded as I passed, spraying sparks and black smoke. At the end of the corridor, the stairwell door was open now, swinging slowly, waiting for me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it. The thing was watching me. I dove down the stairs, skipping steps, scraping my elbows and knees on the railing. I didn't stop until I was back on the first floor, gasping, heart pounding. When I looked behind me, nothing followed. But I could still hear the faint squeal of something, scratching at glass. Back at the nurse's station, I crossed out rule number 2 with my pen, not because I intended to break it again, but because I never wanted to read it again. And then I noticed something. The paper of rules had changed. Rule number 6 now read, "You showed it your face. Now it knows yours." Part 4, hide at 3:33. I watched the clock obsessively for the rest of the night. Every tick felt heavier. After what I saw in the mirror, I didn't trust time anymore. I didn't trust anything. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, I knew I had to prepare. I found the medicine cabinet near the old pharmacy room. It was tall, rusty, barely big enough to fit a person. The inside smelled like metal and dust, with a faint copper tang, like blood dried long ago. I climbed in, closed the door. Darkness swallowed me whole. The air inside the cabinet was still, so still that I could hear the blood in my ears. The thump of my own heartbeat became unbearable. 3:31 a.m. I whispered the rule to myself. If the clock reads 3:33, hide in the medicine cabinet. I don't know if I was comforting myself or begging the rule to work. 3:32. A low hum began, like the hospital's walls were vibrating. Then, exactly at 3:33, the knocking began. Slow, deliberate, not on the cabinet door, on the walls, everywhere. It sounded like fists pounding all around me, behind me, above me. Then I heard scraping, nails, long and sharp, raking across the cabinet door. A high-pitched screech like metal against bone. Something was outside. I held my breath. The sound stopped. For one long second, it was quiet again. Then came the whisper. "You're not the first one to hide here." The voice came from inside the cabinet. Behind me, I spun around in the dark, knees banging the metal wall, hands shaking. There was no one. Nothing. Then came the second whisper. "But you're the first it remembers." A wet handprint smacked the inside of the door in front of me. Fresh. Dripping. I shoved the door open, gasping, falling into the hallway. Silence. Total. The hallway was exactly as I had left it, but colder. The fluorescent lights buzzed dimly above. A soft drip echoed from somewhere distant. But the air was wrong. It smelled like mold and antiseptic and rot. I stood slowly, heart hammering. That's when I heard it. The breathing, not mine, from the cabinet. Something was still in there, and it was breathing. Heavy, slow. Then came the whisper again. "You can't hide every night." I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the cabinet. And that's when I noticed. There was a new handprint on the outside of the door, but this one was mine. Exactly where I'd pressed it. Only it was charred, blackened, burnt into the metal, like I'd left part of myself behind. I ran back to the nurse's station, paper of rules clutched in my hand. It had changed again. Now it read, Rule number 7, do not hide in the cabinet more than twice. If you do, it will take your place. I stared at it, blood freezing. Then I saw the clock, 3:34, and for a moment, I saw my reflection in the glass of the station window. But it wasn't moving when I did. It smiled. I didn't. Part 5, the surgery room. The humming started again. Not like before. This time, it was music. A voice, soft, female, humming a lullaby. Sweet, melancholic, wrong. It echoed faintly down the hallways, like a memory someone tried to drown. The sound came from the old surgical wing. I should have ignored it. I should have followed the rules. But curiosity kills more than cats in this place. I found the swinging double doors to the surgical theater. They creaked open at the lightest touch. Behind them, a wide, circular room filled with dust and shadows. Rows of broken lights hung from the ceiling like spiderwebs. A cracked observation window loomed above. The stainless steel operating table sat in the center like a stage, but it was the blood that stopped me. Fresh, still wet, trailing from the table down to the tiled floor, where it formed a circle of symbols. Something ancient, etched in both paint and flesh. And hovering above it was her, a nurse in old-fashioned scrubs, 1950s. White, pristine, untouched by time, except for the blood dripping from her hands. Her eyes were hollow, her skin gray. Her lips moved slowly, humming that lullaby, as she floated inches above the ground. I froze. She turned to me and smiled. "We're still operating." Her voice wasn't hers. It came from all around, echoing off the walls, deep, guttural, and then, without warning, her head twisted sharply, a sickening snap, as if something cracked it from the inside. She floated higher. The lights flickered violently, and then the operating table moved by itself. The restraints snapped open and slammed down again, clamping the air. The tools on the side tray began to rattle. Scalpel, bone saw, rib spreader, all vibrating, all eager. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut behind me. The lights cut out. Total darkness. I could hear the surgical tools clinking, sliding, moving, coming for me. I backed up slowly, breath catching in my throat. Then, the nurse dropped from the air, right in front of me, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were black holes. She whispered, "Lie down. You're next." I screamed and pushed past her, throwing myself toward the sealed doors. They wouldn't budge. I turned back, just in time to see the surgical tools fly through the air, aim straight at me. One grazed my arm. Blood spattered the wall behind me. Then, the light came back on, just like that. Everything was still. The room was empty. The tools lay untouched. The nurse, gone. The circle of blood faded like spilled wine soaking into the floor. But my arm still bled. I stumbled out, clutching my side, breathing hard. Back at the nurse's station, I collapsed into the chair. My hands shook as I grabbed the rule sheet. A new line had appeared. Rule number 8. If you hear the humming, cover your ears and do not approach the surgery room. If you enter, leave before the last note ends, or you will be the next patient. I wiped the blood from my arm, and that's when I noticed. The scalpel cut wasn't shallow. It was precise, surgical, like someone had begun an incision. Part 6. Don't answer the intercom. The intercom crackled to life. It was a soft noise at first, like static. But then, something more. Human. "Nurse, please report to room 306. I froze, every muscle in my body stiffening. My ears rang with the unnatural hum of the intercom, and my heart seemed to stop for a split second. Room 306. I didn't know what was in there. I had never heard of it before. And yet, something tugged me toward it. Something in the air felt wrong. The intercom buzzed again. "Nurse, please report to room 306. I should have followed the rule. I knew that now. I should have ignored it. I should have turned off the speaker and never looked back. But instead, I found my legs moving of their own accord. My body was already walking toward the elevator. I reached the elevator, pressing the button with shaking hands. The doors slid open slowly, with an unnatural groan. Inside, it was cold. Not the sterile kind of cold you expect from a hospital, but a deep, unnatural chill that seeped into your bones. The elevator creaked and shuddered as it moved, the lights flickering with each passing floor. Bing, bing, room 306. I stepped off the elevator and into a long, narrow hallway. The walls were covered in cracked, peeling paint. The smell of decay and dampness thickened the air. Every step felt like it echoed louder than the last. Click, click, click. And then I heard it, a faint scratching sound from the end of the hall. My eyes darted to the door of room 306. It was cracked open, and through the gap, I could see a flicker of light. A soft glow, like a candle or something that shouldn't be there. Scratching. It was coming from inside the room. Something was inside. I pushed the door open slowly, cautiously. The room was nothing like the others. It was sterile, clean, too clean. A single bed sat in the center of the room, the sheets perfectly made. The air smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, far too pleasant to be real. But the scratching continued. It was coming from under the bed. I knelt down, heart pounding in my chest, and peered underneath. Nothing. Just darkness. Then, a hand shot out. It grabbed my wrist with unholy strength. Cold. Clammy. I screamed and tried to pull away, but the grip tightened. Whisper, "You shouldn't have answered." The voice was distorted, garbled, like it was being forced through broken speakers. Then the lights flickered. The room shifted. The walls warped. I turned, panicking, and saw the door slam shut. And the scratching. It was louder, closer. The bed moved. It shifted like something was crawling underneath it. A figure emerged from beneath the bed. It was me. Not the me I recognized. Not the me who had been walking through the halls, but a hollowed-out version. Skin pale, eyes empty. Mouth stretched wide in a grotesque, inhuman grin. It raised its hand, and with it came the scratching sound again. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. The figure took a step forward. It was moving in the way that only shadows could. Slow, jerky, twisted. Its body bent at unnatural angles. It leaned forward inch by inch, and then, in an instant, it lunged, claws reaching out, sharp, hungry. But just before it touched me, the intercom crackled to life again. "Nurse, please report to room 306. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. The figure was gone. The room was empty. The door to 306 swung wide open again. I ran. I bolted. Out of the room. Out of the hall. The elevator doors were wide open when I arrived, waiting for me. I slammed my finger against the button. The doors closed, and the intercom spoke again. "You shouldn't have answered." The doors closed, but the voice didn't stop. It followed me down. It followed me all the way back to the nurse's station. It was still whispering. I sat back down, my head spinning, fingers trembling. The rule sheet had changed again. A new line appeared. Rule number 9. Never answer the intercom when it calls your name. If you do, you'll meet yourself, and you won't survive the encounter. Part 7. The stairwell. The nurse's station was quiet. Too quiet. The hum of the intercom had stopped, and I thought for a moment I could catch my breath. But something was off. I looked at the clock on the wall. 11:56 p.m. The time never seemed to change here. Always just before midnight. Always when the rules twisted themselves tighter. And then I heard it. A distant sound. A faint creak, like old wood shifting. But it was coming from below. I stood up, my legs heavy, unwilling. But my feet moved, drawn by the sound. It was the stairwell. I hadn't noticed it before. How could I? There had never been any stairwell here. I had been in every hallway, every room, but never had I seen stairs. Yet there it was, just behind the back door of the nurse's station. A metal door, rusted, aged. Its edges were corroded, almost swallowed by the floor. And the stairs, they spiraled down. The faint creak of old wood grew louder, as though inviting me. My heart raced as I stepped toward it, my breath shallow. Creak. The door groaned open slowly, revealing a narrow stairwell. The light above flickered once and then died, leaving only the flickering orange glow from a distant exit sign far down the hall. There was no sound now, just the quiet echo of my own footsteps against the steel floor. The walls were lined with faded, peeling paper, like old wallpaper, but also something else, something ancient. I took a step forward. The stairs creaked beneath my weight, groaning, settling under my steps as though the building was alive. I glanced back. The door to the nurse's station was shut now. A cold draft swirled around me. Another step, another creak. I reached the first landing, and that's when I noticed. They were there. Hands. Long, thin hands. Their fingers reaching up from the ground, protruding from the cracks in the walls, curling toward me. I could see them, faintly, against the dim light. But there was something wrong with them. The fingers were too long. The nails were black, sharp. And they moved slowly, impossibly slow, like they were waiting for me to notice. And the deeper I went into the stairwell, the more I realized they were following me. Each step I took, they reached higher. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My breath quickened. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, I heard a whisper. It was soft at first, distant. Come closer. I froze. The whisper came again, only louder this time. Closer. Come closer. You have to see them. My feet carried me forward, but my body screamed to turn around. The air was thick with a sense of dread, but I kept going. The stairwell twisted downward like the very walls were closing in. The metal steps under my feet started to shift, bending and stretching as though the building itself was shifting, pulling me deeper. I reached the second landing. The floor was covered in thick, dark dust, as though it had been untouched for years. I could hear the whisper again. This time, it was louder. I leaned forward. My hand gripped the railing. And then, the lights flickered. For a brief, terrifying second, the stairwell was lit in bright white, like daylight. But I could see what was down below me. The eyes. They were everywhere, hidden in the cracks of the walls, staring up at me from the shadows, watching, waiting. Thousands of eyes, some wide, some narrow, some with the hollow, empty gaze of something long dead. But others were alive. A scream lodged itself in my throat. I could hear their breaths, feel their presence, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was trapped. The whisper continued. Come closer. Join us. I turned to run, but the stairwell was no longer the same. It was longer. The steps had stretched beyond their limits. I couldn't see the bottom anymore. I couldn't see anything. Just darkness. I ran faster. I reached out. The walls closed in. I could feel the cold air, the wet hands of those things, rushing against my skin. And then, the last step, I fell. The ground rushed up to meet me, but I didn't land on the cold, hard floor of the stairwell. I fell into something much worse. I felt the pull, the suffocating weight of many hands. I heard the noise of their nails scraping against my skin, pulling me deeper. The coldness, the sharpness, and then, in the darkness, I could feel their eyes. Welcome. I woke up on the first landing. The door to the nurses' station was back in place. The stairwell was still just a narrow hallway. The stairwell I had entered was gone, but the hands, they were still there. Somewhere, a new line appeared on the rule sheet. Rule number 10, never enter the stairwell. Once you do, the building will take you to places you don't want to see, and you will never come back. Part 8, the hidden floor. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a musty, damp odor that clung to every surface. The stairwell had swallowed me whole, and I now stood at the base of something far darker than I ever could have imagined. The weight of the darkness pressed against me, making it hard to breathe, to think, as though I had stepped into a place beyond time. I had fallen into something that wasn't supposed to exist. I was certain of that. The floor was cold, wet, and uneven. My feet slipped as I took my first step forward. The ground itself felt wrong, like a long-forgotten tomb, buried under layers of dust and history. I reached for the wall. It was slick with something, slick and sticky, but I couldn't quite make it out in the dark. The distant echo of my footsteps bounced off the walls, adding to the growing sense of unease. I had no idea where I was, but there was something more sinister here, something that didn't belong. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, drowning out everything else. I could feel the floor beneath me shift, as if the building itself was alive, breathing with me. Suddenly, I noticed the door. It was barely visible, just an outline in the farthest corner of the room. It blended into the wall so seamlessly that I thought for a moment it was just another part of the decaying structure. But no, there was something about it that called to me. I stepped toward it, every nerve in my body on edge. When my hand brushed against the doorknob, I felt a shock, like static electricity, but sharper, more dangerous. My fingers trembled as I slowly turned the knob, the rusty metal grinding against itself in a screeching protest. And then it opened. Behind the door was not another hallway or room, but a vast chamber, larger than anything I had seen in this hospital. The walls were lined with old, frayed curtains, and faint light filtered through the gaps, casting long, twisted shadows across the floor. The entire place was unsettling, alien. The air was thick with the scent of something rotting, but also something metallic, something unnatural. As I took my first step inside, I realized the walls were alive. They pulsed, undulating like the surface of water. A faint whispering filled the air, so quiet I almost couldn't hear it. It was as if the walls themselves were breathing, speaking. "We've been waiting." I recoiled. My eyes searched the room frantically. I could see no one, hear no one, but the sensation was unmistakable. I was not alone here. There was something, someone, watching, I dared to move forward, stepping cautiously into the room, the whispering growing louder. It was everywhere, surrounding me, pulling at me. Then, just as I passed through the threshold, a sudden cold hit me. A biting, icy chill that seemed to come from nowhere. I froze in place, my breath coming out in visible puffs. The temperature had dropped drastically. I could see my breath now. Frost began to form on the walls, spreading slowly like a disease. Thick frost creeping over the once dusty floor, painting everything in a layer of white, as if this place had been frozen in time. Then I saw them. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Shadows moving along the far wall, but they weren't shadows. No, these were figures, creatures, long, distorted, and twisted, their forms barely human. Their faces were obscured by the frosted glass of the room, but I could feel their presence, feel their hunger. I could hear the sound of their breathing, slow and deliberate, each inhalation seeming to take forever. "Come closer." The whisper came from the deepest corner of the room, just behind the thick frost. I was rooted to the spot, the instinct to run, to escape, fighting with the overwhelming curiosity gnawing at me. But I couldn't turn back. Not now. Not after everything I had seen. Something in me, something dark and insatiable, urged me forward. The rule flashed in my mind again. Don't go near the door. But I had already crossed that line. The frost continued to spread, and with it, the screams. Low at first, barely audible, but rising in pitch with every step I took. The shadows on the wall began to move, slithering, undulating, drawing closer. The air grew heavy, thick with the sound of creaking, as though the very building itself was about to collapse. And then, from the farthest corner, I saw it, the source of the voices, the thing that had been waiting. It was a figure, but not a human one. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its body a twisted amalgamation of limbs and skin, wrapped in layers of frost and shadow. Its face was hidden, its eyes gleaming from within the darkness like burning embers. It spoke again, its voice sending a shiver down my spine. "We are waiting." And then it stepped forward. The ground beneath my feet seemed to shift once more, and I stumbled backward. The frost seemed to move with the creature, crawling along the floor, the walls, consuming everything in its path. "Come closer, child," it whispered. I knew then, deep in my gut, that there was no escape, no way out. I had crossed the line, and now I would face the consequences. The hidden floor wasn't just a part of the hospital. It was the heart of it. The place where everything evil in this building had gathered, where it waited, hungered, and now I was one of them. Part 9, The Dark Truth. I couldn't move. My body felt like stone, frozen in place as the creature stepped closer. The frost continued to spread, the air becoming colder, suffocating, as if the very temperature of the world was being drained away. The creature loomed over me, its towering presence casting a shadow that seemed to consume everything in its wake. I could feel its coldness radiating, seeping into my skin, chilling my bones. But what chilled me more was the silence that followed. Its glowing eyes pierced through the darkness, burning into me, pulling me deeper into its gaze. The whispers had stopped, leaving only the sound of its slow, deliberate breathing, like the exhale of a predator waiting for its prey to make a move. "You've crossed the threshold," it whispered, its voice a low, raspy murmur that sent a shiver down my spine. "Now, you are part of this place, forever." I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like they were bound by chains. It was like the very air around me was a prison, holding me in place, ensuring I could do nothing but wait. Wait for what? I didn't know, but I could feel something was coming. The frost continued to creep, inch by inch, its icy fingers curling around my feet, my legs, my chest, and then the room began to shift. The walls began to close in on me, slowly at first, like the gradual closing of a vice. The creaking of metal, the groaning of wood, the unmistakable sound of a building in agony. The floor beneath me cracked, splitting apart as long-forgotten doors creaked open, revealing more twisted, shadowy figures, their faces twisted in grotesque mockeries of human expression. "The truth is hidden," the creature said, its voice now echoing through the chamber, making the walls seem to pulse with each word. "You are not the first to enter. You are merely the next." The frost spread across the room, turning everything it touched into a crystalline prison. But it wasn't just the frost. It was the truth. The truth of this place, of what it had become. My eyes darted around, trying to make sense of it, trying to find something that made sense. But there was nothing. There was no escape, no way to fight this. It was as though the building itself had become alive, its walls, floors, and doors all part of something vast, something ancient, something that fed on the fear of those foolish enough to wander inside. The whispers started again, growing louder, filling my mind, drowning out everything else. We were once human, before the rules were broken, before we were lost. I couldn't stop myself from shuddering. It was as if I could feel the pain of those who had come before me, their screams echoing in the cold air, their souls trapped within the walls of this place. It was a nightmare, a place that devoured everything and left behind only remnants of the past. And the creature, this twisted thing, was part of it. It was part of the curse, the reason why this building still stood. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come. I couldn't even breathe properly as the frost crawled up my neck, spreading to my face. It was suffocating. The creature's eyes burned into mine, and I could hear its thoughts in my head. "You want to know the truth, don't you? Why this place exists? Why it calls to you?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was my own will or something else controlling me. But something inside me screamed for the truth. The creature reached out, its long, twisted hand moving toward me, fingers extending like claws, covered in frost, sharp and frostbitten. It paused, just inches from my face. "The truth is simple," it hissed. "This is not a hospital. It never was. It was a prison, a place for the forgotten. Those who broke the rules, the ones who chose to defy the laws that govern this world." The creature's lips twisted into a grin, a sick, twisted smile that was more bone than flesh. "You see, this place is where the rules of life and death meet. The ones who break those rules are trapped here forever. This is where they are lost, just like the others before you." I felt a chill run through me. Prisoners, trapped by their own choices. Foolish choices. But then I could feel the cold closing in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. The walls continued to close, the frost growing thicker, the air thinner until I could hardly breathe. The truth was inescapable. Now, the creature whispered, its voice becoming distorted. The only thing left is the wait. Wait for the next, for the others who will come and join you here. I wanted to scream, to beg, but I couldn't. My voice had been swallowed by the frost, by the darkness. And then, with a final, chilling laugh, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone, surrounded by the creeping frost, the suffocating air, and the knowledge that I was now part of something far older and darker than I could ever imagine. I had broken the rules, and now I would wait, like the others. Part 10. The final rule. The room was alive. Alive in a way I couldn't fully comprehend. The frost had consumed everything, creeping up the walls, spreading across the floor, making it almost impossible to tell where the cold ended and where the darkness began. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, suffocating, like the very air was being drained from the room. Every breath I took was like inhaling shards of ice. In the silence, I could hear something. It wasn't the whispers from before. It was different. It was a slow, rhythmic sound, like footsteps dragging across the frozen floor. They were soft at first, but they grew louder, closer, until it felt like something was walking right behind me, breathing down my neck. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't even blink. The cold increased, and with it, the overwhelming sense of dread. I could feel my body shaking, but I couldn't stop it. It was like I was no longer in control. Something was happening, something I couldn't explain. Suddenly, I heard it. A voice. But this time it wasn't the creatures. This was something else. "You've made it this far," the voice said, soft yet sharp, like a whisper that cut through the silence. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "But you can't escape. Not now." The walls shifted. The ground beneath my feet cracked, the sound of splintering wood echoing through the chamber. The room felt like it was moving, like it was alive. I could feel the floor tilt, sending me stumbling, my legs unable to keep up with the disorienting motion. It was as if the very space I was in was folding on itself, twisting and turning in impossible ways. I reached out, trying to steady myself, but my hand met something cold, smooth, a mirror. The reflection that stared back at me was not my own. It was the creature's. Its eyes glowed like two pools of molten fire, burning with an ancient rage. Its face was twisted, inhuman, a grotesque mask of malice. The reflection moved as I did, but it also smiled, a cruel grin that stretched impossibly wide. "This is the final rule," the voice said, now echoing around me like 1,000 whispers. "You've seen what's behind the mirror, but you've never truly seen." The creature in the mirror shifted. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, as if it wasn't bound by the same laws of reality that held me. It reached out, its hands slamming against the glass, leaving behind cracks in the reflection. With each crack, I felt the air grow colder, the frost digging deeper into my skin, my body freezing in place. You can break the rules, the voice continued, but there will always be consequences. The mirror is the key. You can escape, but you must break it. Break the reflection, and you will be free. But you'll never be the same. I stared at the creature, and for a moment, it felt like time stopped. The reflection was still moving, but it felt like it was watching me, observing, waiting. I knew what I had to do, but the dread, the fear of what would happen next, I hesitated. The rules had already been broken, so why would this be any different? Don't be afraid, the voice murmured, but there was something mocking in it. The fear will never leave you, not until you break the mirror. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could feel it thudding against my ribs, trying to break free. But my body was frozen by the terror that had gripped me. The creature's reflection was still there, still smiling, its eyes glowing brighter and brighter, until I thought they would burn through the glass. With a sudden snap, the creature lunged forward in the reflection, and in that instant, the glass shattered. The noise was deafening. The shards of glass exploded outward, the sound of shattering mirrors filling the room, ripping through the air like 1,000 blades. The frost was no longer contained. It spread, consuming everything, freezing my skin, my breath, my very soul. I felt my body being pulled into the broken mirror, like I was being sucked into it, dragged through the shards, through the dark void beyond. And then, nothing. The darkness swallowed me whole. The frost, the creature, the mirrors, all of it faded away, leaving only silence. For the first time since entering this place, I felt nothing. No cold, no fear, no dread. But then, I heard something. The whispers were back. "You broke the mirror," they murmured, like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. "But you can never break the rules." I tried to scream, but no sound came. I tried to move, but my limbs were paralyzed, like I was caught in some invisible trap. And then, the voice returned. This time it was not the creature's, it was mine. "I should never have broken the mirror," I whispered to myself. "I should never have come here." But it was too late. The room was dark again. The frost was gone. But I could still feel it. The cold that lingered inside me, that would never leave. And I knew, deep down, that I was now a part of the rules. Forever. Part 11. The True Reflection. The silence that followed the shattering of the mirror was unbearable. The world around me felt still, almost too still, like the entire reality had come to a halt, suspended in midair. The last remnants of the frost slowly melted away, dripping like the final tears of a broken world, leaving behind puddles of ice-cold water that reflected the fragments of the shattered mirror. For a moment, everything was eerily calm, but I could still hear the whispers, faint, distant, but there, lingering in the air, like the last breath of something alive. I tried to move, to stand up, but my body was sluggish, as if the cold had seeped into my very bones, weighing me down. It felt like I was dragging myself through thick, dense fog that clouded my mind, and every step I took was harder than the last. But then I heard it, the faintest sound like a footstep, followed by a creak of something heavy moving. It echoed through the void. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I turned my head, but I could see nothing. Nothing but the darkness. You thought breaking the mirror would set you free, a voice said. But it wasn't the creature's voice this time. It was mine. My own, twisted and distorted, like I was hearing it from a distance, as if I were trapped inside my own mind. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even scream. The fear was so paralyzing, it felt like it had frozen my very soul. And then I saw it. The reflection, the one I had shattered. It was in the puddle of water at my feet. It wasn't the broken image of me that stared back. No, this reflection was different. It was distorted, stretched in unnatural ways, like a twisted version of myself. My face was pale, almost gray, with eyes that glowed with an unnatural fire, familiar yet alien. The reflection smiled at me. No, it grinned. A cruel, mocking grin that made my heart race. "You've become part of the rules now," it whispered, its voice a perfect mimic of mine, but colder, harsher. "There is no escape. You're trapped in your own reflection." The puddle rippled, and with it, the reflection began to move on its own, no longer bound by my actions. It stepped forward, out of the puddle, as if the water had become a portal. It was real, no longer a mere reflection, but a physical presence. I backed away in terror, but the reflection followed, its steps slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. The air around me grew heavier, thick with a cold that seemed to freeze everything in its wake. The shadows that had been surrounding me seemed to shift, coiling, twisting like living tendrils, reaching toward me. "You can run," it said, "but the rules always follow. The mirror will always be there. You can never escape your own reflection." I stumbled, tripping over the remnants of the broken glass, the sharp edges slicing into my skin, but I didn't care. I had to run. I had to get away. But no matter how fast I moved, no matter how far I pushed myself, the reflection kept up, always a step behind. The room seemed to stretch, becoming endless, an inescapable maze of darkness and broken glass, each corner filled with the echoes of my own footsteps, my own breathing. The whispers were getting louder, clearer, more desperate. "There's no way out," it said. Now not just in the reflection, but in my head, inside my thoughts. "You're part of the rules now. There's no escaping them." I turned, only to find myself face to face with the reflection again. It was no longer just a mirror image. It was alive. Its eyes glowing brighter, its features contorting, twisting, until it was no longer just me at all. It was something darker, something ancient. "Welcome to your true self," it hissed, its voice now a low, guttural growl. "The rules are yours to keep now." The creature's hand shot out, not through the mirror, but from its reflection. It reached for me with long, skeletal fingers, each one impossibly thin, bone-like, curling around my throat. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My vision blurred as I struggled, my fingers clawing at its hand, but it was like trying to break through solid stone. "This is the end of the road," it whispered, its breath cold and foul against my skin, "and the beginning of the rules." The room spun, everything distorted, as if I was falling through a tunnel. My vision flashed between the reflection and the real world, between reality and the darkness. My body was being pulled, twisted, broken. And then, just as I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the world shattered.